Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Although few psychic detectives have actually solved a crime, they can provide help to law enforcement and at least one important service to families of victims. One good lead from a psychic can often reopen a case where the police have reached a dead end. Psychic detectives have played an important role in the still unsolved murder of 18-year-old Caitlin Arquette. She was gunned down behind the wheel of her car in Albuquerque, New Mexico in July 1989. At first, police believed Caitlin was the victim of a random act of violence. But as investigators delved into the case, they soon realized there was nothing random about this murder. Even the most seasoned detectives were stunned by the strange twists and turns in this case. Psychic detectives provided intriguing leads, and eeriest of all, what appeared to be Caitlin's own attempts to reach out from the grave with information about her murderer. Crucial details allegedly from beyond directly paralleled those in a murder mystery written by her own mother. Under the pen name Lois Duncan, Lois Arquette is a successful mystery writer whose novels are filled with intrigue and terror. But there was no greater horror for Lois than discovering an uncanny link between details of her daughter's death and one of her own novels.
I didn't put any connection together in the beginning at all. It wasn't until one thing after another began to occur that I suddenly realized that I had more or less written the story of our own true life horror story. In Don't Look Behind You, I based the personality of my heroine April upon Kate. April was chased by a hitman in a Camaro. That book was published in June 1989, and in July 1989, Kate was chased down and shot to death by a triggerman in a Camaro. The most shocking thing of all to us was that when we read in the police file the Hispanic man who was arrested, his name was Mike, everybody called him Vamp. And in Don't Look Behind You, the hitman who chased down April was named Mike Vamp.
As police probed Caitlin's brutal killing, they discovered the young woman had a secret life centered around her boyfriend, an alleged gang member believed to be involved in illegal activities. But investigators were unable to establish a direct link between either the boyfriend or his gang and Caitlin's murder. With the police department at a dead end, in desperation, Caitlin's mother turned to local psychic Betty Minch.
I rang the doorbell, and this middle-aged woman answered the door, and I looked at her. I had an instant feeling that I knew her. It wasn't that I'd met her. I had invented her. She was physically identical to Ann Summers, the psychic detective in my book, The Third Eye.
Betty Minch considers herself a bridge between the living and the dead. Minch claims she can pick up messages telepathically while in a meditative trance, channeling the words of the dead through the keys of her typewriter.
Usually I get a lot of color moving in my head. Then out of that, sometimes there will come maybe an image. And that's when the words seem to want to start pouring into my head. It was a very clear contact with Caitlin. She was right there. We had the idea that Caitlin was in some kind of trouble, that there were other things going on that the family wasn't quite aware of.
Amazingly enough, it appeared that Caitlin was conducting her own murder investigation from beyond the grave. Some of the messages Betty Minch claimed to be receiving provided police with important new leads. Investigators soon received an anonymous tip from someone who'd seen one of the Crime Stoppers posters the Arquette family had placed around Albuquerque. Arrests were made that proved psychic Betty Minch had been dead right.
She told us that the people who were arrested would have been driving a lowrider car. There would be 2 men in the front seat, 1 in the back seat, that there would be no eyewitnesses, but that arrest would be made because the men would be heard bragging, that our best help might come from somebody in the media, and she identified who that person would be, an investigative reporter named Mike Gallagher.
But there was insufficient evidence to hold the 3 suspects, and they were released. Desperate for more evidence, Lois contacted Noreen Rainier, a well-respected psychic detective from Maitland, Florida. Working with a police sketch artist, Rainier attempted to create a drawing based on impressions she claimed to be receiving from Caitlin.
I have to get their scent. I have to pick up their vibes. And somehow something personal that was on at the time of the crime gives me more information. I can pick up the scent of Katie psychically.
During Noreen's session, Lois listened in on the phone from 900 miles away.
I was sitting in Albuquerque knowing that Noreen was doing this, and I knew what the alleged trigger man looked like because he'd been arrested. I was trying to concentrate on Kate, and I was saying, tell Mother why you were killed. Was it a random shooting, as the police think, or was it something else? Send me a symbol, send me a message through Noreen Rainier. And the picture Noreen sent me was a sketch of Mike Vamp, the hitman in Don't Look Behind You, exactly as he appeared on the jacket of the British edition of that book. Everything was there, even the little scar between the eyebrows. It's like seeing something had been copied from the jacket. And I just started to shake. I couldn't stop shaking.
Lois was shocked. Caitlin had been the only member of the Arquette family to see the new book jacket of the British edition.
I just was very confused when she was telling me I got some man on a book jacket. I'm saying, what are you talking? But then it made sense that Kate was telling us it was a hit. It wasn't a random shooting. It was a planned killing. It wasn't random. And that's what we needed to know.
Even more startling is a tape recording Noreen made as she supposedly channeled Caitlin's own description of her final hours. It's Noreen's voice, but Caitlin's words.
I'm meeting somebody at a shopping center with a C in it. I went up the hill towards the north to that big place up there, to this, I want to call it the Desert Castle. There's just an important person there that I'm not supposed to know is there. I saw things that I shouldn't have seen. They had to make sure that there was no way I would ever talk. And this was a way of silencing me. My crime that was committed against me was to silence me. I'll never be silenced. I'm not a bad person. I'm just young, and I just was curious. I was a good daughter to your mother. I told you almost everything. Almost.
The incredible revelations from psychics Minch and Rainier prompted Lois to write Who Killed My Daughter? And while the police have not yet solved Caitlin's homicide, Lois is encouraged by one psychic message Betty Minch believes she received.
She said that Kate was sending a symbol, that the symbol was a wolf with a collar around its neck, its head jerked back, and the message was that Kate was very sure that the wolf who had been after her was soon to be caught and collared.
The message was particularly significant to Lois, who originally entitled her book, One to the Wolves.
I couldn't explain any of this. All I could say to myself was, it's happening. Somehow it's happening. I have now come to believe that there must be some kind of transition point where it is possible for the dead to communicate with the living, perhaps when they have some very, very strong message to get across. I think Kate was killed because she was getting ready to tell the truth, and she couldn't do it herself, and now she wanted me to do it for her.
Lois Arquette is hoping police or psychic detectives will soon find out what horrible facts Caitlin knew and who stopped her from telling the truth.